Hey everybody, welcome back to Vegas Weekly for Saturday, March 26th, 2022. Yes, I'm back from Vegas for a couple of days now. Back to work, back to reality. I thought this week's show would be an opportunity to talk about some of the things that I learned, some of the things that might help you if you're planning to go to Vegas sometime soon. There definitely have been some changes, and the Vegas of today is very similar to the one that shut down now some 2 years ago. So, but there are still a few differences, and I thought I would kind of run through my experiences there, and hopefully you can learn something from that. And we'll just pretty much start at the beginning with, transportation, etc., hotels, and just a general feel about things. Before I do want to remind you that while today we're going to be talking about some of the big picture things, we will be doing a monthly live stream when we normally do a monthly live stream, the end of the month. This coming Wednesday, 6 p.m. Vegas time, which is the same for you if you're on the West Coast, or 9 p.m. on the East Coast. Now that's a little bit late there. 8 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone and 7 o'clock out in Denver. We have a couple of people that watch from out there. I think we do. Yeah, we do. Definitely do. So hopefully you can join us and we'll just kind of reminisce about the trip. If you were along for the ride, please feel free to join us and we can reminisce together. If you weren't able to join us for the big wedding festivities and all the other March madness that went on, then I do hope that you'll join us as well. And I think it'll be a good time. Usually is, so we'll hang out as long as people wanted to go, probably about an hour or so. All right, so my thoughts. I have to put my glasses up before I can tell you my thoughts. First off, transportation, airlines. Most of you are going to fly into Las Vegas. This was my experience. Both of my flights were almost 100% full. I was very fortunate. Myself and my seatmate on the aisle were fortunate, according to the stewardess, of having the only empty seat between us. So that worked out really well. It was not the case on my return flight, but basically both flights were 100% full. Now these were pretty good time frames and it was a very busy week. Keep that in mind. I'll mention it from time to time, but we went out there on St. Patrick's Day. Also the beginning of March Madness, the NCAA basketball tournament. Spring break is this time of year, so your mileage may vary, but definitely very full flights. You have to wear a mask still in the airport and on the plane. I guess if you go outside while you're at the airport, you can take it off, but otherwise just to keep that in mind. When you land in Las Vegas, you're now landing in Harry Reid International Airport. For most of you, it'll be the first time, but there's really nothing else about the airport that has changed that I could see. So no problem there. Also, no problem getting an Uber or Lyft, which is what I did. I can't speak to the taxi cab situation there. I'm sure the lines were long. I'm also sure they moved pretty quickly, as they tend to do. I suppose I waited about between 5 and 10 minutes once I got to the pickup area there at the airport. And I think my Lyft to Bally'S was around $15, which is pretty reasonable and still around $10 cheaper or so than it would have been to take a cab. So it was worth it to me. I took a lot of ride shares on this trip. In fact, that was pretty much my sole mode of transportation, other than walking from time to time, and I didn't do as much of that as I typically do on this trip. I did catch a couple of cabs late in the evening because my phone had died. So keep that in mind if you're planning to do ride share. Make sure you're watching your phone battery or bring along a portable charger so you can give it enough of a boost, because you do need the app in order to summon a driver. By and large, I thought prices were a little bit high, particularly on the little short routes. Almost everything was around $9, $10, no matter where you went. But I mean, honestly, that seems fair. I mean, if you're only going, a third of the way up the strip, that's not a very long ride for the driver. That being said, I mean, I had some really good fares from down at Excalibur all the way up to where the chapel was, north of the Strat. I think we only paid about $11, $12. The other thing I did notice, make sure you're checking both of the apps, and also make sure you're checking them a couple of times. I clicked in once, and that same ride was around $18. And when I looked the next time, it had dropped like $6 or $7. So it will change. You will also get opportunities to upgrade or wait a little longer for a few dollars less. I did upgrade once when it said I had to wait an extra minute, and I just ended up in like an Infinity SUV, and it wasn't that big a deal. So unless that's something you care about, I wouldn't bother. Did not have a problem, though, getting ride shares anywhere that I was. And I would say typically in 5 minutes or even less in some cases. I stayed mostly towards the south end of the Strip other than the first night at Bally'S, so my experiences are very much sort of tilted in that direction. I probably spent less time mid-strip in the sort of north of Flamingo area than I have at any time in the last 7 or 8 years. I didn't gamble anywhere really north of Flamingo other than a short time at the Wynn and then a little bit of time at Sahara because we were there for the wedding reception. So that was about it. Otherwise, everything was further south on the Strip. A lot of stuff right around the city center area, and then did make a couple of visits downtown. Gambling was not good to me on this trip, but I can't entirely blame that on the casinos. It was just dumb luck. I mean, I did not play a ton of slots. And when I did, I generally did okay. I'm sure I probably lost a little bit of money, but I didn't feel like I was getting ripped off. I played a lot of video poker, and the odds on the Strip are not great, but you kind of know what you're up against, and I just had a bad run, I guess you would say. And other than 1 or 2 pretty good hits, the same thing was true on the Keno. So I can't really speak to how tight the machines are. I didn't really experience that so much because my slot play was a little more limited. I did want to add that drink service was generally good on this trip. In fact, on St. Patrick's Day and the day after, it was really good at a lot of the properties. And I suspect that a number of the casinos may have brought on additional help or scheduled a lot of people during the March Madness time. But at like New York, Park MGM on the 18th, I almost couldn't drink one fast enough. And that's pretty unusual. Same experience at the Cosmo. I didn't play a lot on the floor, though. Played mostly bar top because, again, I was playing a lot of BP and Keno. And generally, again, it was very good. Didn't really have any problems getting drinks. At the Cosmo, when I played for a little while, you have to wait for the drink tickets. But I suppose I was there 45 minutes and 2 of them kicked out, so I can't complain too much there. But generally, wasn't really a problem. I know I gambled at the back bar by the sports book at the Luxor, and it was fine. I had some really good bartenders there. So, and a number of spots downtown, as usual, were great. Particularly Bar Canada. We love Bar Canada. So that was the drink service situation. So they say it was very crowded, and on the weekends I think it's usually very crowded, but the days leading up to it, because of March Madness, also quite crowded. And then even the last couple of days I was there, Monday and Tuesday, were also pretty crowded. But I wouldn't expect that to normally be the case because the convention business in Las Vegas is still very much down. So I think you're still going to have some great values midweek. But if you go over a weekend, even a long weekend, expect crowds like you would have seen pretty much a couple, 2, 3 years ago, which is good for Las Vegas. Not necessarily good for you in terms of pricing. I was very fortunate on this trip to be able to utilize a lot of different techniques to make my trip cost very little or nothing at all in some cases. I did pay for my first night at Bally'S, but due to some tier matching, I was able to upgrade to diamond status. And by doing that, I was able to eliminate that resort fee. At this point anyway, and this could change at any time, if you are diamond with Caesars, you can tier match to MGM, and I did that the first afternoon that I was there. You get upgraded to MGM Gold, which takes off the resort fees as well, for the MGM properties now, which is a great deal. So the resort fees I would have paid at the last two hotels, New York, and Luxor, were completely removed. So that worked out really well. It also worked out really well in terms of checking in. At Bally's, I was able to walk right into the Diamond registration area, and probably in 5 minutes or less, I had my keys and was on my way to the room. New York took a little longer. There was a lady in line in front of me for about 5 minutes. But again, once I got to the front of the line, there was no problem checking in. In both cases, this was before noon. There were no fees. There was no suggestion of that at all. Now, the last place that I stayed illustrated, I think, some improvements that you may want to choose to take advantage of if you arrive at an odd time. And my experience at Luxor was echoed by my friends Mark and Liz, Pennies for Vegas, who talked about it in his show, I think just yesterday or the day before. Use the MGM app. It's a good app. Now, there's still some flaws in it. It's not perfect, but it's much, much better. The MGM Rewards app. In addition to everything else, I was able to more or less track my tier credits almost in real time. Very short turnaround, so you could see that. You don't normally see that when you're playing a machine at the MGM properties, but I was able to check that to see how I was doing in terms of tier credits. When I checked out of New York, I was having trouble checking out on the TV. I was getting an error message. I was able to do it instantly on the app, no problems. I used the app also, though, to check in at Luxor. I left New York around 10 o'clock because I was going to meet some people for brunch at 11. And I didn't hold out much hope that I was going to get into my room at 10. That's pretty early, particularly in the middle of a weekend. But it went ahead and checked in, said, hey, whatever. Didn't have any problems going through and doing that, and was told I would be alerted when the room was ready. Now, I was in the middle of what turned out to be a very long brunch, actually. I think we were still there around 1:30, and when I had checked the app at that time, I was able to get into my room. I did not attempt to use the sort of digital key. It did not work for me back in September when I tried to use it at Aria. But at least at Luxor, there were a number of kiosks right at the front desk. And all I had to do was, scan a little code, tell them how many keys I wanted, insert the little plastic key thing, and it made me, hard copy keys. So that was pretty sweet. Did not ever have to wait in line really anywhere for anything other than when I checked my bags before I got into my room. But that was not a big deal. So I was very happy with that. So I guess there's two pieces of advice. If you have an opportunity through Wyndham or through Caesars or whatever to upgrade to one of those statuses, definitely do it. It'll improve your whole experience while you're in Vegas and will allow you to avoid some lines, if nothing else. And use the apps because they're getting better and they can help you bypass a lot of lines, I think. The only complaints I would have about the hotels was in two cases, the walk to my room was it was pretty long. The Bally's walk was long. The walk to the towers at Luxor is very long. Definitely still my recommendation is to book the tower rooms, but it is a hike. So if that's a concern for you because of mobility issues or whatever, you might want to consider either not staying there or staying in the Pyramid because it's right there at the registration area. If you do stay at New York, try to stay in the Empire Tower, or try to ask if you can stay in the Empire Tower. It is literally right across from the registration area, and it's the building that looks like the Empire State Building from the outside, and it's a very narrow tower. So you go up, and each floor only has like 10 rooms. So no matter where you are, it's a breeze to get to the elevator. So there's a tip or trick as well. I did not experience really significantly any problems with food. Now, on several occasions, we had, when I was eating with other people, we had reservations. Most places seemed reasonably crowded. I'm sure that it would have been difficult in most cases to walk into those restaurants if that was my preference and get in right away. So I think that's still very important, particularly over a weekend or a long weekend like this. There are limited food options late at night. That is problematic in some cases. I did notice that the restaurant at New York, America was open 24 hours. Like you can at least grab a slice of pizza at, 12, 1, 2 in the morning at Luxor, New York, and probably a lot of the other properties. So, if you're planning a sit-down meal, your options are getting pretty limited late night. If you're just looking to grab a snack, it's not so bad. It did seem like most of the shows were back in Las Vegas. I think all the Cirque shows were open, so there's a lot more show options than there were certainly a year ago, but not as many as before the COVID outbreak, if you will. A lot of the smaller Caesars shows shut down, but like, for example, when we were waiting in line at the buffet at Excalibur, it was still advertising Mac King, Australian Bee Gees, Thunder Down Under. Most of the shows that were there a few years ago are still there. So, and some good headliners in town. We did not check out any of that, but definitely something to take a look at. You can always search like Vegas.com. It'll tell you who's going to be there on any particular weekend if you're interested in checking out a show. Won't really be expected to wear a mask anywhere at this point. I know for some people that was a deal breaker. And basically it is not an issue. The only place you may run into it is if you're in a cab or ride share. Initially, the first couple of rides, I did not wear a mask and was not asked to. At one point, a gentleman did ask me to put it on. I did so. It is still technically within the rules. And after that, I pretty much wore it. Speaking of which, on April 18th, I do know that they're going to revisit the mask requirements as far as airports and airliners. So if you're traveling after that, check it out beforehand. Also, going back to the airlines, there was drink service available on the Southwest. Though, unfortunately, they didn't give us a free one on St. Patrick's Day. They used to do that. But so there you go. Like I said, in general, it was crowded. It wasn't crazy crowded. I would say that if you go during March Madness for some reason, you shouldn't worry so much about getting a machine in the casinos. A lot of the people that are there are literally jammed into the sports books and around the bars to watch the games. So during that time, the casino isn't super busy, even though the city is. Okay, if you have any questions about my time in Vegas, my experiences there, let me know. Like I said, we will talk in a little more detail about just some of the things that happened and what I thought of it on Wednesday during the live stream. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up tonight. Pretty much one take today. How about that? And hope that you'll join us for the live. We'll be back here for Vegas Weekly in a week, because that's how we do it. Until then, I hope that you all have a great, lucky, and healthy week. We'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.